To the fighter pilot, speed is life. This credo means harnessing the full power of their machine to outfly and outgun their opponent. Revolutionary technology takes fighter aircraft from the prop age to the jet age. From the verge of stall speed to beyond the sound barrier. Now, you're in the cockpit as ultra-fast fighters use speed as a weapon against lethal opponents, culminating in the first supersonic gun kill in history. Experience the battle. Dissect the tactics. Relive the dogfights. January 21st, 1944. Under the pitch-black cloak of night, a Royal Canadian Air Force Mosquito skims across the English Channel. Its pilot is an American, Lou Luma.
Going over the channel was like being inside of a black barrel. I mean, you didn't see anything. You didn't know where up was or down was or anything.
Luma and his navigator, Lieutenant Colin Finlayson, are night intruders. Their mission? Attack German aircraft right at their doorstep.
The psychological advantage was great. They knew every time they came home that there was an intruder hanging around the airport.
Luma's Mosquito advances to Hildesheim Air Base in Germany. Without radar, Luma has to depend on visual cues to spot his prey.
He could look for the exhaust fires from their engines. He could look for the guy that forgot to turn his lights off, or turned his lights on for some silly reason.
Within minutes, an outgoing enemy pilot exposes himself with a costly mistake. He's left his lights on.
The navigator spotted this one white light coming toward us. We had a white light in the nose and a white light in the tail.
A Messerschmitt 410, and it's climbing fast. Luma stays low, undetected. As the German plane passes overhead, Luma cranks his Mosquito into a sharp 180. He has to gain ground quickly before the German fighter reaches his target. Adrenaline surges through Luma's veins as he races toward his enemy.
There's two Merlins of mine with the throttles pushed all the way forward to catch him, because I didn't want him to get away.
In his excitement, Luma closes too fast. He's about to overshoot the German.
At that point in time, I'm just sick at the stomach. I think, God, I'm screwing this up.
Luma slams down the landing gear and throws his Mosquito into a series of hard turns to drain airspeed. He manages to stay behind his prey. He opens up with all 8 guns.
As soon as you do it, there's an explosion. And then just ram the nose forward to avoid flying through all this debris.
Later, Luma learns that the German pilot he defeated was a Luftwaffe ace.
He had shot down 5 British bombers that night, and he had landed to get more fuel. In his excitement, he left those lights on.
Luma speeds away into the shadows, a victorious night fighter. The Mosquito has inflicted its deadly sting. The de Havilland DH-98 Mosquito is one of the fastest airframes of World War II. A lightweight wooden frame wedded to twin 1,700 horsepower Merlin engines. The Wooden Wonder, as it became known, could reach speeds well over 400 miles per hour.
There's nothing that was built then that would be able to catch you.
Its performance and its massive firepower of 4 20mm cannon and 4 30 caliber machine guns made the Mosquito a force to be reckoned with.
They could go on any number of utility missions and combat missions as well. Weather reconnaissance, photo reconnaissance, attack missions where they would actually put bombs on things. They could go on strafing missions down low.
One such strafing mission will take Mosquito pilot Lou Luma from the murky shroud of darkness into the revealing light of day. March 24th, 1944. Luma's Canadian Air Force Mosquito again steals across the English Channel. It's a rare daylight appearance for the plane and its pilot.
It had what they called daylight rangers. These were trips that they would let us go out in daytime, 2 aircraft at a time. You had to plan your own trip.
Today, Luma's target is an air base on the French-German border.
The idea was they would go in unannounced, by surprise, with lots of speed, make one pass, wreak all kinds of destruction, and then get out of there.
Less than 5 miles from the airfield, Luma spots a bogey. It's a Ju-37, a single-engine trainer. The Mosquito pilot knows that he must jump his enemy before any alarm can be raised. He creeps into position. Luma's 8 weapons bark to life. The German trainer disintegrates under the combined weight of fire.
He probably never, ever knew what hit him.
Luma continues to the airfield at about 400 miles per hour. As he approaches, Luma spots scores of targets. Aircraft and gliders parked in the shape of an L along the flight line.
We predetermined that we were only going to make 2 passes. Down the one, circle to get in line for the other row, and then get out of there. Get in, hit them quick, and get out quick.
The Mosquitoes wade through the ground targets, ensuring the enemy planes will never claim kills of their own. Aircraft fire all around them. The Mosquitoes climb away, leaving behind the smoke and debris of a successful mission. But halfway to the English Channel, Luma spots a new target.
And then we saw Junkers 52. That was an old tri-motor transport. And that was a tough old bird.
Cinema breaks for the safety of England. He lands home having scored his 5th victory. He remains the only American Mosquito ace and a prime example of a fighter pilot using speed as a weapon.
You know, Lou could be writing some rules of thumb for today's intruder pilots and attack pilots.
The Mosquito earned a reputation in the European theater for its rapid speed and its hard-hitting armament. But in the Pacific, another aircraft will earn its place in history as the fastest Allied fighter of the war. April 22nd, 1945. F-4U Corsairs of the U.S. Marine Corps patrol off the coast of Okinawa. Flight leader Lieutenant Jerry O'Keefe and his men are part of VMF 323, the Death Rattlers. They have been tasked with a special late-war mission to seek out and destroy Japanese kamikazes before they strike home on American ships.
We had been patrolling above the picket ships for over 2 hours without any activity and no enemy planes in the area. All of a sudden, we were notified by the picket ship below us that a large number of enemy aircraft were coming down from the north, from the direction of Japan.
A swarm of suicide aircraft rattles toward the American fleet. They begin to loosen their formation and disperse in an effort to present fewer targets to the advanced American fighters patrolling the area. One such patrol, led by Jerry O'Keefe, is high above and closing fast.
If your advantage over the enemy is, say, 50 or 60 miles per hour in speed, it makes very little sense to get involved in a turning contest with them. Instead, use an altitude advantage, dive in a high-speed pass, pick your shot, fire, and use that momentum to zoom again and retain your altitude advantage.
O'Keefe picks a target out of the pack, a slow-moving Val dive bomber at 2 o'clock low. Anxiously, O'Keefe slams his throttle to the firewall and dives, determined to land the first punch. April 22nd, 1945. Corsair pilot Jerry O'Keefe is diving fast on a kamikaze. The Japanese plane fills his gun sight.
O'Keefe rolls in and does a classic gun run on it like he did in the training command. So he makes one pass at this valve and disintegrates it with a .50 caliber.
O'Keefe levels off with 6 more valves ahead of him. His powerful Corsair will have no trouble catching up to the lumbering dive bombers. The D-3A2 Val is the primary dive bomber of the Imperial Japanese Navy. But with fixed landing gear and a weak 1,300 horsepower engine, the Val is not much of a dogfighter. The F-4U Corsair is the most advanced fighter in the Pacific. Identifiable for its innovative gull-wing design, the Corsair earned a reputation for its searing combination of speed and firepower.
The Corsair was far superior than any plane really in combat that the Japanese had at that point.
The Corsair's power comes from the legendary R-2800 radial engine, the same engine that powered the F-6F Hellcat and the P-47 Thunderbolt.
The R-2800 in the World War II fighters. What a fantastically reliable, capable, powerful aircraft engine. tremendous ability to put out power.
The Corsair can top 440 miles per hour, making it the fastest fighter then in service with the armed forces. Now, Corsair pilot Jerry O'Keefe is using his aircraft's trademark speed to close the gap on 6 Japanese Val dive bombers.
I was behind them, and it was my intention to shoot all 6 of them down, but it didn't work out that way.
O'Keefe sights up the leader and pulls the trigger.
And I missed him, and he left the formation and turned sharply to the left. And I decided I was going to stay with him until we settled that matter.
The Val dives into the clouds. O'Keefe doggedly pursues.
I had put my landing flaps down a little bit so I wouldn't run past him.
Finally, the Val pilot's luck runs out.
Just wasn't enough cloud cover for him to get into. And then I had a dead-on shot from the stern. He just blew up, you know.
As O'Keefe returns to the fight, another Val comes screaming right at him.
We went past like this, and then we both turned into each other to try to get an advantage.
This kamikaze pilot has the heart of a dogfighter. The 2 aircraft engage in a deadly low-speed scissors above the water, taking O'Keefe to the wavering edge of stall speed.
O'Keefe is lowering his flaps, slowing down. This is a Val that can fly actually probably slower than he can, trying to pull inside of it.
On the second pass, O'Keefe lands a few hits. The dive bomber smokes, but its pilot refuses to back down. The kamikaze noses up, intent on ramming the Corsair.
I guess he realized, that he was gone, and wanted to take me with him, and I didn't want to go.
O'Keefe desperately yanks the stick back.
So I pulled up and was able to avoid him. But it was very, very close, and I was extremely scared.
The Val noses over and plunges into the water. It's a hard-fought 3rd victory for O'Keefe. The American pitches up, knowing he can trade altitude for speed. Leveling off at nearly 10,000 feet, he spots another Val below.
The next engagement that he has is very similar to his first engagement. He looks and sees a bogey down low 2 o'clock.
The kamikaze pilot doesn't see it coming.
Some of those pilots didn't seem to see other aircraft. They were oblivious to what was about to happen to them in most cases.
O'Keefe accelerates, does another classic training command style gunfiring pass at high speed, and gets the kill on the first pass.
As O'Keefe climbs away from his 4th victory, he spots a lone Val off in the distance. No doubt on an attack run against the American fleet.
With O'Keefe's engagements against the kamikazes at Okinawa, the great limiting factor is the amount of ammunition that he has in the aircraft.
Low on ammo, O'Keefe uses his best asset, speed. O'Keefe trains his sight pipper, takes a breath, then fires. With only a handful of .50 caliber rounds left in his guns, First Lieutenant Jerry O'Keefe becomes an ace in a day by splashing 5 kamikazes. The other death rattlers bring the day's total to 17. Not a single kamikaze successfully strikes the fleet.
O'Keefe and the death rattlers, they saved thousands of lives by blunting those assaults coming in. And that we owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude for that.
The F-4U Corsair proved itself to be the consummate war machine of the Pacific Theater. But the end of World War II brings with it a quantum leap in technology. Pilots trained to harness the power of piston engines now had to adapt to the blistering speed of jets. The Korean War ushers in the jet age of air combat, where speed becomes a major factor in turning the tide for the Allies. December 17, 1950. 4 F-86A Sabre jets knife through the icy skies of North Korea. It is one of the first combat missions for the new swept-wing fighter. The stakes could not be higher.
Before the F-86s came on, we're flying straight-wing F-80s. Good airplane, good flying qualities, but no match for the MiG-15s. The MiG-15s came on the scene, we were putting bombers over the north, and they were getting chewed up. We had to get air superiority, and the F-86 was the aircraft to do that for us.
Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Hinton leads the mission. The North Koreans are unaware that the Americans are fielding new aircraft, and Hinton plans to keep it that way.
We were cruising at a low airspeed to imitate F-80s to entice the MiG to show up and combat us.
There's a saying in fighter aviation and dogfighting, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So luring the enemy up for a fight, creating deception is all legal, and it's all encouraged, and it's anything you can do to get them going.
In a matter of minutes, the enemy Air Force takes the bait. Hinton's wingman calls out bogies crossing the Yalu River at 9 o'clock and closing fast. 4 gleaming MiG-15s bore into the attack. The fastest dogfight of the new jet age is about to kick off. December 17th, 1950. Sabre pilot Bruce Hinton keeps his cool. He's got enemy MiGs approaching his flight at breakneck speed, but he wants to lure them in close before he strikes.
All we knew is we had to attack first. If they got on our tails, we'd have trouble. One thing you don't want to have is a MiG-15 on your tail. At all. Ever.
Ground control orders the MiG pilots to get a closer look at the American fighters before they engage. As they pass beneath the 4 Sabres, the North Koreans catch sight of the swept-wing design.
And to the MiG's chagrin, here's his airplanes sitting there that were every bit as high performance as they were. The MiG itself was actually slightly slower than the F-86.
The American trap is sprung.
Well, upon sighting the MiGs as they were crossing underneath us, I called drop tanks now, and we all drop our external tanks. At that point, I turned to maneuver.
Breaking right, Hinton firewalls the throttle.
We had to pick up speed from what we were cruising at. I had to pour in the coal to get the airplane moving. So we had to pick up speed and pick up maybe to 0.85 or something like that.
Hinton's flight noses down and swings in on the enemy's 5 o'clock, closing fast. The lightweight MiG can outclimb the Sabre and boasts harder-hitting cannon. The Sabre has a slight edge in top speed, and its heavier airframe allows it to approach Mach 1 in a dive.
They both had strengths and weaknesses relative to one another that tended to cancel each other out. At jet speeds, suddenly everybody is butting up against the sonic barrier, and at about Mach 0.94 or thereabouts, everybody's capable of doing the same speed. So what did that do? That took us back into the turning arena.
The MiG flight splits defensively. Hinton's targets, the MiG leader and his wingman, break left.
They commit a cardinal error. They reverse their turn. So Hinton slides right in for a guns kill. Now here's a very capable and qualified gunnery pilot.
Hinton's airspeed indicates 0.95 Mach, the knife edge of the speed of sound. He selects his target.
Well, I picked the lead guy as the man I ought to attack. But then as I maneuvered, I said I'm going to get on the closest one.
At about 1,500 feet, he pulls the trigger.
I could see the hits bouncing off his airplane, or at least reflecting off his airplane. But he didn't do anything. He just stayed there, and so I kept firing.
The North Korean pilot frantically pops his speed brakes.
At that point, the bogey does a second incredible error, and that's to try to slow down, maybe to spit him out, maybe to make him overshoot the turn.
I had to slow down to stay on his tail. I didn't want to get ahead of him.
Hinton almost overshoots him, comes directly underneath the belly of the aircraft, 5 feet from him. So he can look up and see the rivets, and he's just hanging in there.
The desperate MiG driver wings over and dives, hoping the American will turn him loose. No such luck.
I followed him, and I let him have a long burst. And that's a lot of 50 caliber slugs. Well, at that point, he looked like he was really out of control.
The MiG plummets into the snow-covered ground below. The rest of the MiGs use their climbing speed advantage to bug out of the fight.
They just firewall the throttle and soon climb, and the F-86s couldn't keep up with them.
Hinton has drawn first blood for the F-86 Sabre. Within weeks, air superiority over North Korea again belongs to the Allies. Though still considered a subsonic airframe, the F-86 proves that speed is often the decisive factor in aerial warfare. As the science of high-speed flight becomes more thoroughly understood, the next generation of fighter aircraft incorporates technology and design elements that make the sound barrier a thing of the past. In the hostile skies over North Vietnam, ultra-high-speed interceptors like the F-4 Phantom make their combat debut. And one skilled Phantom crew will bet it all in an attempt to score the first supersonic gun kill in history. June 2nd, 1972, Thud Ridge. An elaborate rescue operation is underway to save Roger Locker, an F-4 Phantom crewman downed northeast of Hanoi 23 days prior. Major Phil Handley and backseater Jack Smallwood lead Brenda Flight, 4 F-4 Phantoms tasked with keeping enemy MiGs at bay while the rescue ships go in.
A massive raid was laid on because that super Jolly Green Giant and those prop-driven Spads, A1s, are going to have to go in there right into the jaws of hell up by the doorstep of Hanoi to pick him up.
After several uneventful passes around the recovery zone, Handley's cockpit comes alive with the 1,000 hertz rattle that can mean only one thing: a surface-to-air missile launch. Handley turns into the alarm, scanning for telltale dust and debris.
The SA-2 is a rather simplistic missile which you could defeat easily if you could see it in time. So we turn into it. We can't pick them up. I see no missiles, we don't see anything.
A false alarm, but the SAM threat has forced the flight to expend precious fuel.
It was a typical day in that we were running out of fuel tanks. I was the only one of the 4 aircraft that had a centerline tank on it, 600-gallon centerline tank.
Handley's element leader calls bingo fuel. He must break off with his wingman and head for a tanker, leaving only Handley and wingman Buddy Green to finish the cap. And just then, a warning from radar control.
He said, Brenda 1, he said, this is Worm. You have bandits 123 at 8, 123 degrees at 8 miles.
MiGs closing fast from 4 o'clock low, hell-bent on killing the Americans. June 2nd, 1972. Major Phil Handley and wingman Buddy Green have some unwanted company. Enemy MiGs on their tail. Handley breaks hard into the threat.
My backseater, Jack Smallwood's doing everything to try to lock these guys up, but it's a look-down angle, and these aren't pulse Doppler radars in those days. Looking down into ground clutter is like looking into clabbered milk.
The situation quickly goes from bad to worse.
We're not picking them up. And just as we're getting close, my wingman buddy calls bingo.
Handley's wingman needs to egress and refuel. The flight lead knows that separating could be deadly. The Americans disengage and head toward the Gulf of Tonkin. But on a routine check of his wingman's 6, Handley spots something.
I see this glint of light behind Buddy, down low, about 4 o'clock. Well, MiGs are silver at the time, and nothing could be producing a glint of light other than a silver MiG.
The Major orders his wingman to cross to his right wing, allowing him a better view.
At a range of about 8,000 feet, there they were, bigger than Dallas. 2 silver MiG-19s, perfect sharp bearing aircraft.
The MiG-19 is small, agile, and armed with 3 30mm cannon. Its twin engines each pump out over 7,000 pounds of thrust, making it the first supersonic fighter in the Soviet arsenal. The F-4E is the Air Force's ultimate version of the venerable Phantom II. Originally designed for Navy fleet defense, the Phantom's role evolved into that of a dogfighter during the Vietnam War. To that end, the E model is equipped with an internal 20mm cannon in addition to missiles. But the Phantom's reputation is built on raw power. Its twin J-79 engines pump out nearly 18,000 pounds of thrust each, allowing the massive fighter to double the speed of sound.
The F-4 Phantom is truly the performance aircraft of its generation, and it comes to its own at high speeds. When you get that aircraft above 475 knots in a turn, it just keeps wanting to accelerate.
In a dogfight, the MiG-19 is more maneuverable, but the Phantom has a huge advantage in speed and weapons systems. Now, Phil Handley is faced with a mortal decision. His wingman's fuel tank is running dry, but he wants to take a crack at those MiGs.
I said, Brenda 2, you continue on out. I'm going to take one run at this guy. And he's, in a voice just calmer than you can imagine, he casually said, I'll stay with you.
Handley throws his J-79 engines into full burner and cranks back toward the MiGs, an incredible 9G pull.
I was so full of adrenaline, I don't recall pulling any G's whatsoever, but I slammed over 9 G's on the airplane. And that, supported by God's radio G, I really just came around quick on these guys.
In his dive, Handley's Phantom goes supersonic.
The idea was to keep their energy up and to fly faster and use the advantages that the Phantom had.
I went through the Mach at the 90-degree point and never came out of afterburner. So in the next minute and 42 seconds, I traded a half a ton of JP4 and 3 miles of altitude for airspeed in pursuit of this guy.
While Handley dives, Wingman Green climbs sharply to gain altitude and conserve fuel. The MiG leader makes a critical mistake. He climbs after Green, allowing Handley to slip past and line up a missile shot from behind. Handley rolls out on the Bandit 6. He puts a 5-mile bore sight on the leader and ripple fires his 2 radar-guided AIM-7 Sparrows.
The first one, the rocket motor didn't ignite, just fell off. The second one took off and didn't guide, just went into a moonshot.
Handley is closing at nearly twice his enemy's speed.
If he continues like that, he'll overshoot them. He wants to take that energy, keep the speed without slowing down, and just fly a bigger distance through the air. And if he pulls the nose up, makes a large corkscrew maneuver and then back around, he will have flown the equivalent of 5 times the distance that the MiGs have flown. So that's how he keeps his airspeed and also keeps in geometric position on his pursuit.
Handley's radar-guided missiles are gone. He's down to his 2 heat seekers, the notoriously ill-performing AIM-4 Falcons.
It was a hit-to-kill missile. That's all it had. So I slapped it down. The tone in your headset says the missiles are looking because it sounds like a Norelco razor.
The lock tone sizzles in his headset. The time is now. Handley pushes the button and fires. June 2nd, 1972. Major Phil Handley launches his last 2 missiles at a pair of MiG-19s. But again, technology fails him.
One of them never came off the rail, and the other one went up in a moonshot.
Left with only his 20-millimeter cannon and closing at over 900 miles per hour, Phil Handley is locked into a Mach speed version of a classic dogfight. He will attempt the first supersonic gun kill in history.
Handley's a guy that had a game plan that didn't count on anything working. So now he's just been let down by all the technology that American missilery has to give him. Does he give up? No, he has kept himself in the position.
Handley is here. The lead MiG and his wingman are here. Though he has kept himself in a pursuit position, Handley must now get a firing angle.
An airplane turning that isn't jinking around has a plane, an imaginary plane that sticks right vertically perpendicular to his canopy out. If you can get into that plane of motion ahead of him and have a bullet stream laying out there and he doesn't move, he'll fly through that stream.
The lead MiG-19 brakes hard right. Handley witnesses his enemy's awesome agility firsthand.
A MiG-19 is a very fast turning airplane. There's no way that I can do any sort of a lag maneuver or stay inside his turn, so now I'm down to a high deflection shot with the cannon.
Handley pulls hard right. He thunders toward the slower moving MiG at a speed equivalent to 4.5 football fields per second. There is no room for error. If he misses with his last weapon, he will overshoot and make himself the target. As Handley begins to pull lead, he struggles to keep a visual on his enemy. The long nose of the Phantom obscures the MiG.
You cannot point out directly ahead of him because that nose obscures him. So you must carry him down here in this quarter panel here, just below the plane of motion. And he's coming around. At the last moment, I rolled up and then back down in the plane of motion, held down the trigger.
A quick 3-second burst. .310 20-millimeter rounds hurtle into the MiG's line of flight.
That 20-millimeter stream walked right down. The first one hit up in the left wing root. The next one, I saw it hit the wing root, left nose, canopy, wing root, tail. And just that fast. And as quick as I passed him, I quarter rolled and zoomed.
Handley glances back.
There was flames and fluids and big chunks falling off of him, and he was flopping around.
The MiG crashes into the jungle. After a series of frustrating misses, Phil Handley scores.
And there must have been 25 fighter pilots up in Route Package 6 all hollering, you know, and shouting. And last one I recognized my squadron commander, old John Down. He said, "Way to go."
The MiG wingman rolls in on Handley's 6, but the American is going too fast and easily climbs away. Arriving at base, Handley learns that the rescue mission he supported was a success.
We went back to Udorn Channel 70, and there was the greatest celebration you've ever seen, because there's old Roger Locker. You know, they got him out.
Handley's role in the rescue mission is historic. With an indicated airspeed of Mach 1.2, his victory is the first and only recorded gun kill at supersonic speed. Most modern fighter aircraft are capable of surpassing Mach 2, indicating that speed and life continue to be one and the same. The question now becomes, how fast is fast enough?
The question you have to ask yourself is, once you have a Mach 3 fighter or interceptor, what are you going to do with it? Because unless the enemy has a Mach 2.8 interceptor or fighter aircraft, what are the relative advantages of your airplane over whatever anybody else might have parked on the runway at the same time?
Today's air combat tacticians are often more interested in the performance of an aircraft's weapons systems than the performance of the plane itself.
You have very powerful, reliable radars. You have